Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. My name is Dave McCormick. I'm VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I am pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, I believe, Dion will be going over more of the ViewBox control, but we're also here to take your questions as well. So go ahead and type any questions you may have into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Dion, I'm going to take you off mute here. Hello, oops, I'll take you off mute again.
There we go. I'm not touching anything.
We're fighting each other.
It's like,
we're talking back
well,
and
we were
forth
like that.
Each other. Oh my God.
That classic right at the door, and you're like, after you, no, after you, and then we go both at the same time. Classic.
Hey, Dion, welcome. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Dynamite.
More smoothly, and I'll let you know when I can see your screen.
I am in control.
And there it is. Fantastic.
Well, good. Well, thank you, everybody. I know it's been a little bit of an adventure finding us, but we have our new links. If you know anybody else is having a hard time, send in an email to guides@Alpha Software. We'll make sure you're updated. But we really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. Today, we're going to go ahead and continue and pretty much wrap up the ViewBox control here today with the series we started a while back. And then along with that, we're also going to be taking your questions. So very important for us is take the time to go to the questions area of your GoToWebinar questions and answer and put some in there, and we'll monitor those and try to get to as many of those as possible. And remember, you can always send questions ahead of time to guides@alphasoftware.com. That's GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. And we keep an eye on that. Helps drive our what we want to present and what people are looking for. In fact, if you have ideas for series items that you would like us to cover, let us know. We've got some really good updates on both Transform and Alpha Anywhere. So we're going to be updating everybody on the progress there, some new features, new capabilities want to share with you. And also, if you are interested more in Transform, we have Transform Tuesdays. And I'll tell you, this week's Transform Tuesdays was off the hook. It was just,
it was.
The demonstration was crazy because it just showed the extent of what you can do with the Transform platform. Actually, Dave, just I know there's some people who have already seen it, but a 2-minute kind of overview of that would be great, of what was demonstrated.
Sure. Awesome. So we had another one of our solutions engineers, Nikos Kazantzis, who put together a really slick application using Transform, and it did all kinds of cool things. It looked up information from an onboard SQLite database. It was looking up data from a Google Sheet. It was taking that data and performing calculations and if-thens, and it was just a really neat presentation. So that'll be posted very soon to the Transform Tuesday archive. I know a lot of you here today were also there yesterday on the webinar, and if you did register yesterday for the webinar, then today I'm going to be sending out to you guys a link to the source code of the application, which is the working application that you saw yesterday. So stay tuned, check your mailbox for that. If you're interested in more information, send an email to tfservice, as in transform service, @alphasoftware.com. Thanks, Dion.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, if you haven't seen that video, it's really an impressive demonstration. And it kind of tells, that Transform's growing up. It's getting its big boy pants on. It's has a lot more capability. Always had amazing capabilities to build forms, but it goes way beyond that now. And we'll also be focusing more in the near future about how you can then leverage both Alpha Anywhere and Transform together to create the you've got chocolate in my peanut butter and peanut butter in my chocolate. It's awesome. Awesome stuff. Well, good. And things, the development team's moving along. We will be doing an update on the roadmap very soon with all the new improved capabilities. And there's some very visual improved items, but there's also a fair amount of under the cover stuff that's actually being going on that we're going to share that just increase the capabilities, performance, and functionality of our technologies. And I'm already starting to see that in the process now. Now, what I wanted to do today was go ahead and give you a quick demonstration. What we focused on is the ViewBox control. And the fact that the ViewBox control has this infinite flexibility in terms of your ability to create a user experience just to blow away your end clients. And specifically, you're not limited to traditional user interface elements, meaning, the traditional grid structure, fields, text boxes, those kind of things there. You can now incorporate a wide range of sort of metaphors and capabilities to make your user interfaces shine. And we kind of talked about that last week, where we had a client that basically wanted to use a super simple touch and update information kind of form, meaning that instead of a traditional, it's more of like on a tablet, tap, 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 and you got your job done. And that's where people are going to. I mean, if you look at any of the modern apps like, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all these other apps, everything is done through very straightforward tap, pinch, zoom. There's not a lot of typing going on anymore because of the power of the user interface. So this allows you to achieve those kind of capabilities. So what I want to do to dive today is to talk a little bit more of, well, how would I wire up, say, a list box to the ability to edit some information or do something along those lines? So I'm going to go through a quick demonstration, take about 15 minutes or so to show you how I can build sort of the best between a text ViewBox and a UX, and use some of the techniques for doing that from there, just to kind of spark your creativity. And we're, again, just really scratching the surface of what we're going to be able to do with the ViewBox. So with that, go ahead and remember, if you have questions, get them in there. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I was smart this time, I created it already, so I'm going to recreate it this time so I don't have these weird things there. So the first thing I want to do is I want to build a basic interface where I can link a ViewBox to edit a customer record. So I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to create a UX to edit that customer. So let's go ahead and go up here, and we're going to add a UX here. And this may be a little interesting for people who haven't done it before. So UX is our form component, and I'm going to go ahead and add a control, but I'm going to have Alpha build this UX for me. So I'm going to click populate list from a table. And I'm going to connect to my database. In this case, I'm just going to go to Northwind. I'm going to select my customer table here, click OK, and now click OK. And once again, it'll ask me a couple other little questions. Dun, 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 dun. As you can see, it's creating the controls here and wiring everything up to the database. OK. And good. So I'm going to go ahead and save this bad boy. And I'll call this customer launch example underscore UX. Okay. Now, I'm sure other people have seen this, but this creates what's called a data bound UX component, and it's already got like the navigation and stuff like that. So you can see I can navigate through the items here. It's already preloaded. So that's kind of an out of the box standard capability. But what I'd rather do is have this basically pass an argument into this UX, and then from there load up the records. Let me go into the design here, and let's go to the server side. So you'll see right here we have on dialog initialize. It pre-built on a server side action called get primary keys. So that's what basically calls the database, loads up the first record, stores a bunch of stuff, and then allows you to navigate through them. Well, I want to do something a little differently. What I want to first do is the following, is I want to pass in an argument. And I know it'll come back to the ViewBox in a minute, but this is important because this is a basic design concept of how you launch UXs with data. So I'm going to go to my properties here, and I first want to create what's called an argument. And think of it as a variable on the UX itself. So I'm going to go into my search. I'm going to search my arguments. And I'm going to create a new argument. I'm not limited to one. So I'm going to go customer ID. Okay. So we have customer ID of type character, and we're going to set the value at runtime. So basically, we're just creating think of it as again, a variable on the UX that we can pass into the UX here. So now I can go back to my server side action, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to go dim customer ID as C, and then I'm going to go customer ID is equal to, and I'm going to use the built-in function to basically load. So when this UX opens up, I can basically take whatever the value of this argument is and put it into customer ID. So the intent is when this UX opens up, I'm passing in, hey, here is the ID I want you to load up. And then once you're there, the rest just works. So now that we have the ability to pass in that argument, we need to now tell Alpha on the UX that we need to have the ability to to load up the data. So I'm going to go over here I'm going to go to Action Scripting, and you'll see one called Populate a Dialog with Data from One or More Tables. So it's a pre-built action that will run, that will load data into this UX. And it gives it a name. So I'm just going to give it the name. Now, if you knew like the primary key, I could just go like alf key. And then what would happen is this script would run and always load up alf key. But that's not really what I want. I want it to basically read from a variable and grab that variable customer ID. So you're seeing what happens is I'm pulling the customer ID from the argument. Then I'm going to tell the system, hey, go ahead and populate the data using that as the primary key for the record, and click OK. So now when this launches, it's going to look for an argument, and then based on that argument, it's going to load the data into the user interface. So I'll go ahead and click Save. So now I have my basic customer UX where it'll load that information into it. Now I can go in and start working on launching this UX. So I'm sure other people have done things like create grids with buttons. We're going to create something very similar. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a new UX. And I'm going to just start with a blank one here. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm not going to start with a blank. I want to cheat. So I'm going to go new and do UX. And then, wait, no, I hit the wrong thing here. Right. Okay. New UX. And what I want to do is I'm going to cheat and use a ViewBox to show details for a list record. Let it build everything for me to a large degree. Okay. Always a good example is, start with something like this. So you can see immediately when I load this in here, it's got some static data. And when I click on it, it loads up my ViewBox. So I have a list control and a ViewBox, and they're connected together. And Alpha's already done the pre-wiring for me. Now, the issue is I don't want static data. I want to actually load the data from my database so I can go to that customer record. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my list control here. And you're going to see that we're currently using static data. But I can just rewire this by saying, OK, we're going to use SQL. And we're going to use Northwind here. And I'm going to go ahead and select our table, which is customers. I pick the fields I want, so I'll pick a few fields right here. I could filter it, do a bunch of other stuff. So now here are my filters here. And then I have to go to my list layout and basically just show these are the new fields I want on there. Okay. So again, all I did was take that static data that was pre-coded and now make this dynamic. So now it opens up this list box with that data in it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'll call this launch UX from list of ViewBox _UX. Okay. So I need to make one more change. You'll notice that I went in and I grabbed data, these fields here. When this was originally created, this ViewBox, it was linked to my list, but my list had different data in it. So I actually have to go into my ViewBox here, and you'll notice it's static JSON. So I'm going to select list and point at my list control. So now I'm linking my ViewBox to my list control. And in fact, if I go to fields here, it'll show me, here are my fields I'm pulling back from the database. So it takes care of all that. Hey, what's inside there? That's what we want to use. So I need to do one other thing here, is go here, and you'll notice that I'm still using the old static data here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in here, I'm going to insert a field, which is going to be customer ID, and I'm going to insert another field, which is the company name. And then on the next line, I'm going to insert a field, which is the contact name, and I'm going to insert a field, which is the contact title. So the cool thing is by using this, a lot of the stuff is already done. I'm just kind of rewiring everything in it. Now you'll see one other thing we can talk about in a minute, but if I go to working preview now, and I select an item, you'll notice that, hey, check it out. The list box is driving my ViewBox item there. So basically, when I click on here, it repopulates my ViewBox to show that information. And as I said before, that doesn't have to be just text. It could be this nice grid. We're showing colors and other things like that because it can all be driven off the data that comes from the list box. Okay, so we're almost there. Got to do two things. What I want to do is when I'm here, when I click on this ViewBox item, I want to launch our new example here. So basically, when I click on an item here, I want to pass in an argument and say, load up this UX to do it. And then I'll show you something pretty cool in a moment. So the first thing I need to do is go to this list box and say, hey, you know, I'm going to return the value to be field, and that field is customer ID. So that means when we select an item from the list and it shows in the view box, we know which item is there. So now what I can do is the following. I can now create an action. So let's talk about that before I dive in and start doing that. So if you'll notice in here, the view box has a data source, which is where it gets data from. And by the way, you're not limited to a list control. You could do things like web APIs, etc. It pulls a set of fields from there. And then we have a layout which lays out the screen. But we also have something called items. And what items are, think of them as little triggers or little actions that you can create that are JavaScript actions. So what we want to do is create an action where if we click on that action, it reads the current value of the list box and opens the UX. So let's go ahead and do that. So one technique, just to go back here, is I could create the item and then start doing all the JavaScript. But here is a better technique. I always now, when I'm going to create something like that, I go to JavaScript actions. This is fairly new, so you may not have this on your interface if you're more than, I think, 3 or 6 months old. I'm not sure how old that was. But this allows me to centralize all of my JavaScript actions, and then therefore, wherever I need to use them, I can then insert the code or like a little piece of script to say run it there. The important thing is then I centralize all of my activities in one place so it's easy to manage my system. So I'm going to go into JavaScript actions. I'm going to add a new action, which is open UX. Okay. And it creates this action, but you'll notice it's red, which means it hasn't been created yet. So I'm going to double click on this and it opens up our action JavaScript. So we're back into the regular action JavaScript world. So now I can go add new action, type UX, and then I can select UX name. And the UX I want to open is called Customer Launch Example. That's the one I just created here. And you'll notice that since I created a argument on it, when I created this UX or action JavaScript, it said, hey, by the way, this is expecting an argument. So you need to go ahead and tell me what you want in that argument. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this. And I'm just going to insert my field list 1. So it's basically going to grab the customer ID from list 1 and put it in there. So now when this action is triggered, what it will do is it will first look at the value of list 1, then it will call this UX and say, open yourself. And by the way, here's the value for customer ID. And then once it's in that UX, then it says, oh, here's an argument, and pulls it in and loads it from there. Okay. So I'll do this. By the way, and I might as well take a few moments on this right here. You'll notice that there's a default action called used cached UX component. And it's defaulted by there. And I'll explain a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and disable it, but I'm going to come back and talk to that because that can be tricky for people. And I want to explain the behavior in a few moments, just so you know what this is about and how you would handle it. There's some good things about it, but there's also some things you need to know about it. Okay. So now we have our new action. It hasn't refreshed, but we have a green button right here. So now we can go ahead and click here to see the JavaScript code and just copy that to the code. So anytime you run this dialog object run action, it runs this action JavaScript. Now, whenever I need to modify that behavior, I can just go right here and have it here. So it's not sort of buried inside of a script, into a side of a button or a list control or something else. So a real good practice is to put all your JavaScript actions there and then in your code do the linking, which is what I'm going to do next. So we have our list control in our view box. Now what I want to do is go into the view box. I want to create what's called an item, which will be that action that triggers that UX to be opened. And I also want to basically tell it where to put that action. So I'm going to go ahead and go in, or that item. So I'm going to go to view box. I'm going to go to items. So as you can see, our items are not there. There's no item. So I'm going to create a new item and I'm going to call it open UX. Done. So you can see there's an item name. It's whether it's selectable or not. Basically, you can set some class, but you'll notice there's a whole bunch of JavaScript code. So like swipe, up, down, etc. So I'm going to go to on click here. And this is just plain old JavaScript here. So what I can do is go down here at the end of it and notice there's some other help that is there. So I'll go right here and I'm going to say actions job, insert code to run a JavaScript action, and we'll see our open UX. So I copied it. I could have pasted it right here, but this is an easy way to do that. And so again, you manage all of your JavaScript actions here, and then wherever you need them, you can just say insert the code to run that action, and then click OK. So now we have what's called an item. And I could have multiple items. Like I'm going to go ahead and create another item saying alert. And that action here on the click event is just going to say alert hello and click OK. So now I have multiple actions. So you could have many different actions. So here's an example. I'm going to go back to this interface right here. I could have a tap action. So when I tap on this, it does something. I could have a press, like when I press on it, it does another action. I could have a swipe action. I could have many different actions. So the idea is you have these different items that can be triggered, and then you tell it when the person touches that or does that, trigger this specific action. So it really opens up a very wide array of sort of behaviors you can enable in your user interface. So I'm going to go in here. So I have an open and an alert. Now we've created the items, but we haven't attached them to our HTML. And the idea behind items is that they are little actions that can trigger either plain old JavaScript or more complex JavaScript actions. And then we go to our layout here and we need to put in here where we're going to put that action. So, or that item. So I'm going to go ahead and change this. I'm going to go /div. Oops, if I can spell. And then I'm going to go down here and put /div. So this is just plain old JavaScript, or I'm sorry, HTML. And what's most likely going to happen is your HTML CSS designer will just give this to you already preset. Then you can say, you know what? Anytime anybody selects anything inside this div, so I have a div opening tag and closing tag, I want it to trigger one of my items. So I'm going to go here to div, and I'm going to go right there, and I'm going to say insert item. In this case, I'm going to do open UX. So you'll notice that this div now has basically an item associated with it. And remember, this div is this content. So anytime anybody touches any of this content, it's going to trigger this, which in turn will trigger our action JavaScript. And if this works, we'll see in a moment, we should see that behavior there. Okay, so I'll go into working preview, select a row. Now I'm going to click anywhere in here and check it out. It opened up my UX, and more importantly, notice it passed in the value of this here. So let's go to Bergs, touch Bergs. There it is. It loaded Bergs in there. And then I'll go to Blonde P, click here, and there. Now you'll notice I can click anywhere inside this div because the div covers all of this content right here. So even right here. But let's say I wanted to do something where I wanted to only when I click on the BLONP. So let's go back into design and show you how to do that. And this is where it gets fun. Now we're just kind of making the experience the way we want to it. So I'm going to go in here where we have customer ID, and I'm going to use something called a span. And a span is like basically a way to say, hey, this is a little piece of content. And if there's a better way to do this, let me know, because I'm always open for that. But this is the way I figured it out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to get rid of the div here. And inside this span, which covers just my customer ID, I can now go here and insert an item and do open UX. So now this open UX item only covers the customer ID spot. And let's see if I did it correctly. Okay, so I'm clicking on this, I'm clicking on this, click on this. I'm now going to click on Annotar, and it worked. I'm going to click everywhere here except, and then Bergs, and it worked. So the cool thing is I'm using text here, but these could be button controls. These could be graphics. These could be images. You name it. You can just go in and attach items to those elements. So for instance, let's say I wanted to do something for contact title. So I'll go in here and I'll go span. And I'm going to put in the end tag. Okay. And in the span here, I'm going to insert an item, and this item is my alert item. So now I have a customer ID or an open UX, and I have two, and they're triggered differently. So now I can go to save, do a working preview. Okay. So I'm going to first click on like this, nothing happens. Click here, that happens. Now I'm click here and there's my alert. And so this is how you can basically, and that's why what items are is you're really wiring up HTML to JavaScript. And in our case, we're even going the next step and doing JavaScript actions because it does all the work for us. Now let's make this interesting. You know, this is kind of a boring interface. I gotta want stuff popping up. So let's do the following. And then I'm gonna come back and show one other quick thing here. So I'm gonna go to panels. I'm gonna create a panel layout. Okay. I'm going to put this in the first one in a panel card. And I'm going to put this in another panel card. Oops. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a third panel card. Okay. And I'm going to dock this collapse. I'm going to say the minimum size here, our layout size is 40%, and the dock is collapse right. Okay, so the idea is this panel card is going to be empty, and then the view box here. So if we go in here and look at this real quick, all we've done so far is we have this panel card, and then the hidden one on the right. And let's go ahead and make this fill the container, and let's let this view box also fill in the container. That way, essentially, especially if you go to mobile, it basically takes and looks a little nicer. So you can see now you have this nice list here and this here. All the other things I've done still work, you know, those kind of things here. Now, what I want to do is right now this pops up. Man, not too great. What I actually wanted to do is I wanted to show inside of a panel card. So let's go into design, and this is the power. If I had put my JavaScript action inside the view box, I have to go to the view box, go to the item, find the item, go in here and make the modification here. But since I have taken the time to centralize my JavaScript actions, I can go right here and say, you know what? I want this to open up inside of a panel, and the panel is panel card number 3, that hidden panel card. Boom. That's all I had to do. And now everything else stays the same. So I'll go in here. See, I can go here and then watch. Okay, now we're almost there. Got to do one more thing. You'll notice when I clicked on here, you saw it like kind of spin because it did, and it loaded up that UX, but the problem is that UX is not visible. Back to the drawing board, go to JavaScript actions, open here. I've got a single one, so I'm going to say add new action, and I'm going to go panel, and I'm going to set the active panel to be panel card number 3. And I'm going to go ahead, and so that's it. And I could run them synchronously, but this thing's so fast, don't need to do that. So notice again, I went and just went right here to modify the behavior. I didn't have to go dig it out. So let's go to working preview. I'm going to go ahead and select one, and now you'll notice, oh, what's going on here? Oh, this part I didn't test ahead of time. Wait, did I not? Hold on a second. Maybe I do need to do them synchronously. Set active panel. Okay. Oh, I almost had a perfect demo. Yeah. There you go. By the way, let's change the styling on this. So I'm going to do first, I'm going to go here and change my styling to be alpha blue gray. Okay, that looks good. Then I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to, that's the problem. I don't have them there. Okay. Very important, by the way, we've learned this more. If you have this kind of like you're opening stuff in other stuff, you always have to set the style names at every level. And I'm going to go ahead and use the compact theme so it's nice and neat. So let me go back here, and this should look a little nicer. Okay, it's a little denser. So now I'll click there. And notice we have this nice looking panel coming out. And then when I click here, you'll notice it loaded up and put it there. So now instead of all this stuff popping up, it's like now starting to show up pretty slick from that standpoint there. And again, no coding. The only coding I did was I took this and change this to load it from the customer ID. So technically I did 2 lines of code. So hold it against me. So I'll live with that. Now I want to show you one other quick thing, and this is an important concept. So I'm going to go back to my ViewBox here, and you'll notice when I click on here, it opens up this right here. Okay. And you'll notice if I go to a different record and I open that up, it opens up Blonde P correctly. Okay. I'm going to go back to my server-side events or my JavaScript actions, open UX, and I'm going to go into that UX component. Now, remember when I said I don't use cache component? So I'm going to click that and enable that, and then click OK. So I've made just that one little change. And now I'll go into working preview. I go here and click on Alpha key. Okay, it worked fine. Then I'm going to go down here to Blonde P, and I'm going to click Bond P. Oh, it did work. Wait. Why did it work? Did I save that properly? Uh-oh. I'll have to go back. Maybe they... No, it's this one right here. Use cache. The interesting thing, and why I wanted to show you this, is the issue of this. Using cache UX components will speed things up because basically it doesn't recreate and rerun the whole component. And you'll see there's some text here that explains. The onDialog initialize event will only fire the first time the UX is opened. So if you want to fire every time, you have to turn caching off. So in mine, and this is the important thing, you'll notice is that in my here, I'm doing it on the onDialog initialize. This is only going to run one time, but for some reason it's working now. So let me see. Let's save this. And let's save this. And then I'll go back to the group from there. It's just something that I've seen other people struggle with is I put all this code in onDialog initialize, and since they have it cached, it only runs once. But I'll show you the answer around that. So that's Bergs. I wonder if it's maybe it's because it's working within this environment. I'll have to check on that. Anyway, word of the wise, just know, be careful if you use the on cache component, onDialog initialize will only fire once. By the way, to get around that is that what you can do is we have the onDialog execute that will run every single time you trigger this UX. So this will run once when it first initializes this UX. This will run every time. So if you want code to run every time, you also have something called the on synchronize, where in that case, you can tell it to synchronize and rerun this code here. So a little more data on that later, but just a word to the wise from that standpoint. It wasn't working this morning, but surprise, surprise. Okay, so real quick recap. List boxes are super fun, super powerful. You separate HTML, CSS from the data source, and it will automatically merge it. You can use one or more items to add behaviors to it. These items can be linked to JavaScript actions, to AX basic callbacks, you name it, you can do it, or you can just use plain vanilla JavaScript on here. Another thing you can do is you can pass in data to these. So for instance, you want to run this alert, but you want to pass in the selected row or the item in the view box, you can do that with arguments, which are really powerful. And also within this, you can also enable and do some really cool stuff with panel cards, etc. So play with view boxes. They're really fun. We're doing a lot of new stuff. We have a couple new projects starting that are going to use some really extensive view box capabilities to create very powerful interfaces. And once you figure it kind of out, you'll find it's actually simpler and faster to create an interface inside ViewBox than to lay it out with a bunch of fields and then a bunch of containers and show and hide. There's so much flexibility built into it. There's a lot of things you can do from there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to our esteemed colleagues and people and see what questions you might have.
Hey, thanks very much. So let's take a look. We had a question just at the top of the session, which was, when will the sample site inspection app from yesterday be available? That will be available later today. I plan to send out an email. Here's another. We've got a couple of ViewBox ones. Let's do the ViewBox ones first.
Great.
The first one is, how would you highlight like a name in the view box using a mouse over. Can you do that, or like
Yes.
have it up here? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And the way you do that is using items.
Yeah.
So, and this is I'm not going to be able to demonstrate because I'm weak on this stuff, but what you can do is you can use jQuery inside all of this here. So for instance, let's say I had a span right here. I could write a little piece of JavaScript that on the fly does, for instance, changes the class that's associated with this span. And then that would change the color of the code from there. So what you can do is go into items and you can create an item, call it change class. Okay. And then on the, let's see, I don't see.
Wait, is there no mouse over? There's swipe and down hold
there.
Well, before
that
select.
might be a little bit more work. These are like trigger events kind of scenario.
Yeah.
So we may have to do a little research into that, but that's a great point because you would want to be able to create that interactivity of, well, especially won't make much sense on a phone because you're
not for a phone because it doesn't know where your finger is, but
exactly. But
in
on
a web
on a desktop, which we want to use it for both. So why don't we take that as an action to go figure out how to do that and come back?
Let's go talk to the dev team
and what I'd like to do also is show you that what's kind of cool is Alpha has a whole bunch of built-in capabilities in JavaScript to like change classes of things on the fly. So you can make colors change and stuff like that. So this will be good an exercise for us. So I'm going to make a note on that and we will get that done. Thank you. Good question.
So someone suggested that you could put it into the HTML directly.
Yes.
Probably could. And then keep the CSS for that on the CSS tab of the view box.
Yep.
So yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's take a look at that for next time. Those are good ideas. Here is one, not ViewBox, but we'll get back into them in a moment. Have you ever done an integration with a web-based time management application like Monday.com or Trello or Time Manager? I think Time Trade is another one. I don't know.
Well, I haven't done with a time manager, but I have done integrations with many different third-party systems. So let me go ahead and go here. Let me open Chrome. So let's just look at one of them. Almost all of them now support APIs. So, or webhooks, some kind of capable Monday. Okay. So the first step is go to their site. And again, with Alpha, which is really cool. Why? I wonder if these guys haven't. Let's just go like Monday.com API. There we go. Developers.monday.com. So you'll see there's a full API in it. And what's nice, this is a REST. This is perfect. This is awesome. So you would get an API token and you put your token in here. And then you have all of these different commands that allow you to interact with it. And what's cool about that is you can use the curl to XBasic generator to take this get command and turn that into, so this is like get a list of users is what this gets all users. So you have to have your token. And then when you do that, then you can see exactly how it runs. And then you can convert that into XBasic. And then once it's XBasic, you're off to the races. You can write scripts that call and read and write updates back and forth between that system. So step one is and they're all going to REST APIs because that's the industry standard. Have an account, then get a developer's account. Usually you have to go on and enable these capabilities. Like you'll see, where's my API token? Well, it tells you have to go to admin, choose API, and copy the token. So it takes all of 1 or 2 minutes. Then you put it in here and run these. And then when you run them, it'll show you examples. And then the trick is to turn that into a XBasic command. Now there's 2 different ways you can do that. One is some systems give you the curl command. So you can go ahead and do a curl command, and I'll show you an example of that here. So like for instance, auth 0 curl commands. And it depends. Most of them do this now, is that, let's see, where is it? Here's Oracle Cloud. I'm just going to throw this out and show you an example. So in their case, they actually give you the documentation with a curl command, showing you exactly how to call that. And most of the more modern systems do it because curl is the industry standard for how to do that. Now, once you have this curl command, so let's grab this curl command, copy it. I can go into alpha and go into my XBasic area. I'm going to create a new XBasic script here.
Mm-hmm.
And I can use the curl command XBasic. And I paste that curl command in there. And this will probably fail because I can't actually get access to this system. I don't have the login and stuff like that. So it'll probably time out here. But it will create XBasic here, and then that will do the same thing as this curl command. So that's option number one. And again, this will fail because it's probably going to time out saying, you don't have access to this system here. But there's another alternative. So let me go back while that's timing out here. I'm going to go here. So we have a get command, and this is what it returns. This, by the way, is what it returns from there. And so I can go in here, and this is get v1. So I can go into the other method I can use. It's got a timeout. It's going to take a moment here. Should have thought about before doing that. One other option I do is I'll go into something like Postman, which is a third-party product. And then I can do like a get command here. So let me see if I've got a good one here. I think it's this one right here. Come on. Oh, those are all there. But you do that here. And what's cool about this is that, guess what? They'll give you the curl command here. So you can actually put it in as a regular like get command and use it here. And then you copy this and you take it into alpha and do it there. Now, a third option, which is also valuable. Oh, yes. Have to report that. And let me show you another option here. Save often. Come on. There we go. Okay. So I'll go to XBasic new, go back here. So if I don't have the curl command, I can also do the following. I can use the here, and then I can say curl command builder. So I can literally go in here and say, okay, get. So let's go ahead and look at that. That's get. And they'll give you an endpoint on here. So I'll go back here and I'll go http://monday.com/get v1.user. So I'm kind of there. And then if there's authorization, if I have headers, they'll tell you all these different things here. And then I can click OK and generate that XBasic, and it creates this code. Then I click OK, and there's my XBasic code. Now it won't work because built into this URL will probably be that API key that I need from them. So once you have that, you'll be able to do that. But now once you have this, what will happen is it will run that call, and then this is what runs that call. And then it brings back the headers and the contents, and if I go back to here, will be, in this case, so, and it'll give you these statuses, but then it will give you, this is what will come back in a JSON string right here. So this is telling you it's going to give you the resources URL, the identifier, the name, the email, etc. Then once you have that, that is what's in contents right here. And then you can just convert that into a pointer or there. There's actually, we did a presentation on this methodology at the Dev conference. So there, if you're interested, let us know and we can send you some links on watching a little bit more in depth of how we actually extract data from a web API. But the goal, again, back is first, determine if your system has an API. Second, get your API key token approval. Third, exercise it, get to kind of learn it, and then either use the get command, or if you can get the curl equivalent, which a lot of them will have, you can then go into alpha, convert it into XBasic, and then you're golden.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Dan.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Back,
Thank you. Good question.
back to ViewBoxes.
Oh,
So you showed a view box earlier today, which had a list of students and their skills, or employees and their skills. And I was
right.
wondering if you could show that again, because we have a question about how you did that.
Yep.
It looks like up along the top, you have a list of students' names, and presumably you may not know all of the students or how many there are. Maybe you did at the top. And so the question is, how'd you get sort of a variable list of students going across the top of that list? How
Good
would you set
point.
that up?
This is how I did it. Remember, a view box, and let me go back just to the to view box 101. So let me go ahead and do that real quick and explain a little bit more. And in fact, so I'll go to UX component and I'll click a blank one and I'll go in here to view box, controls, view box. And we'll go to data source. We'll go to data, and we're going to make this static JSON and sample data. Let's say, I'm just going to use his names right here. So very important here is that the view box is built out of JavaScript, or I'm sorry, JSON. And what the view box does is it takes this JSON and then just does what's called templating. So what we can do, and the way to kind of learn more about this, there's a great article on the website on it, but we also showed this last week. You can go to the template tester window. And then I go to JSON data. I think I can put in load an example, and I'm going to example a more complex enable. Let's see, I think it's this one. Okay, so you'll notice that we have we have a hierarchical structure of a view box, meaning you have the highest level, you have a customer name, but then a customer has orders under it, and the customer has under the orders, it has orders and credit cards. And then what you do is you have your JSON, this is your view box structure, where you have orders at the top level. So each top one will be the orders, and then it will then spit out this piece here. So the way we accomplished that is we created a JSON representation, and the JSON representation was students and their programs and their status. So we had a list of students, or we did it as a list of programs, and then each of those programs had a student that's associated. So we had to create the JSON representation to show this kind of, here's a class, and here is the student and their information for each one of them. So it's very similar to this. I have a class, and then I have a set of students here. Now, this is all vertical, but there's no reason why I couldn't put a table structure in here and say each column of the table holds a different student record for this top level class. And therefore, it's going to iterate through that over and over, put the student names at the top, and then their contents in each of the table columns. So basically, we're mapping JSON data to a sort of a table structure. So in our JSON, we have a list of classes, and then below that JSON is a subset of records, a parent-child relationship of student and status. Then we just used a table structure that said, go ahead and first row put their student names, and then the next row put their value here. And since this, we can use that root, so this only spits out once. So the tricky part, and it's good catch on your part, is that you first need to kind of understand the structure of your data, and then you map it into your visualization. And this is where you can play with the template tester, because you can mock that data up. So for instance, you can come in and say, okay, I can go ahead and put in here, and I'll go name, John, and then I can go class. Hey, wait, let me do this right. Yeah, so I can go name, then I can go in here in a class, and I'll say class ID class, date, etc. Maybe I get rid of that one. I don't need that. Or let's say score. So once I've created my structure, then I can start modifying my template to display that. And I'm not limited to a vertical orientation. I can then make it a horizontal orientation. Now, one thing that's really cool, I got to show you, this is super fun and very exciting. I don't have to do this manually. If I already have a table structure that shows, say, students, let's say it's like customers and orders. Guess what? I can go into Alpha and I can go to Genie, XBasic SQL Actions Code Generator. And I can say, get a SQL database to get a hierarchical JSON data. So we go in here, we select our connection string. So I'll do Northwind. I'm going to add a query, which is add a table, which is in this case is going to be customers, okay? And I'm just going to get them all. Now I'm going to add a next query here. I'm going to add the table, and this is going to be orders, okay? And the linking key between, and know they're nested, the linking key is the parent field is customer ID. Oh, the parent linking field is order ID. No, it's customer ID.
No, it should be cust ID, right?
Yeah, that's it. Customer ID. Okay. Now I can save these settings so if I have to come back and do it, but I can go ahead and copy this code to the clipboard, paste it here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go show var JSON. Come on. Why is it not doing that? Of course, pre-release. Let me close and reopen it and see what happens here. Huh. It's something on my system, and I apologize on there. But what will come back will be this hierarchical structure. Then once I have that structure, I can now just work on my template. So Alpha is going to generate the code. Was there an error? Maybe there's an error. Let me see this here. That might be what's going on. It might have ran with there is an error. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You have written a sub requirement then one field without access. Oh, I hate access so bad. Let me try this. Hold on there. Bear with everybody, and I don't want to bore everybody, but this is what's nice is
cool
Alpha's
stuff,
doing
though.
all.
SQL's used it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're gonna use hierarchical JSON everywhere as you start doing more view boxes and other stuff like that. So let's go ahead and add a query. I think I have a full set of tables in here. No, it's just the one. Oh no. Let me try one other. Let me select a different. I just moved. Oh no, I got there. I apologize. Bottom line is that will return your JSON. It's going to look like this. And then once you have that, you can use the template tester to kind of like say, okay, on the top row, put their names on there. And I got to tell you, it's really fun and very easy to do that. You'll have to spend a little time learning more about JSON templating, but there are incredible documentation with examples online. Selwyn and Sarah and the team did just an amazing job, and just go to JSON template. There's, this is the basic information, but I think there's actually another page real quick. There's a whole article on JSON. Man, where is that? This is all like information. So this kind of shows you an example of what it might look like. But there's a whole user guide on JSON, which is really cool. Let me see if it's here. User's guide. Where is that? Yep. TA setting. Maybe I have to go a little bit more. It's about tree data, JSON. Oh, it might be. If Sarah's on, she's
I
probably
think
already found it.
JSON data, I believe.
Oh,
Sarah
okay.
just posted to the chat window.
Yep. I tell you, I look at this all the time. Yes, here you go. And I believe she sent that link.
It's already in the chat window if you want to play along at home.
This is amazing. It it does a little bit about there, but where it gets into, it says like how to use JSON with XBasic. So I used it, a call from the database, but you can actually create your own JSON, i.e. create a pointer and then turn it into JSON, which is another method to do that. And it shows you how to do that. Then it talks about like parent and subchilds, which is what we're talking about. Like here's a client and there's their courses, in this case, addresses. Then it goes in and starts talking about how to use it in the UX component and this and that. So if you read through and go through this document, you will come out on the other side, and it gets really complicated. I mean, you can do, I think there's a whole section on using it for doing like reporting. Let me go all the way down here. Like here, check this out. This is a template with JSON. So it's an HTML, and notice number, item ID, etc., including parent-child data and everything. So you can create extremely, extremely sophisticated, nice-looking interfaces, and all you're doing is pulling back your data from the database in a hierarchical structure, and then using, notice this is orders, and it'll iterate over orders. And then here you'll see there's credit cards. It's iterating over credit cards. Again, a little learning on your part, but then you'll be far ahead. And you could create essentially what we did here, which was you have a set of courses and a set of students, and we just laid it out this way instead of vertical. It worked really well. And then again, we used items. So when you tap on one of these items, it actually opens up, and I'll show you here. It opens up a UX right here, and then you tap on, well, in their case, we actually opened up a detail view. You edit the detail view. When you submit it, it saves it behind the list, and then you update the view box. So we used a different technique to be fully offline. But this, if you don't need it offline, this could be a UX. You tap here, it opens up that UX, edits record, and then you tell it just refresh the data for this list, and you're done. You list in the view box. So it becomes very straightforward to create that touch. And the user doesn't really see, it just happens almost instantaneously for them.
Wow, that is awesome.
It's fun. It's cool.
Three questions which are very similar in nature, and we probably won't have time to answer any of them, but I'm going to go over them anyway.
And if not, we'll have
to do with, because I think for next week, because there were three different people, this is cool. But they all have to do sort of with progress bars. And so one question had to do with a transient message. So there's a process, a script going on, and what they would like is during parts of the script to update the transient message to let them know where they are in the script. So like maybe process 1 is complete, now process 2 is complete, now process 3 is complete. So that's question 1. Question 2 was, could we give a demonstration of using the step indicator control? That's one of those special controls that you find in the UX component. And then the last one was just a simple, how do I implement a progress bar? So
cool. We will take those as homework. That's great. That's the kind of stuff we want, guys. And don't wait to come here.
If you send them early, then we're prepared early. But those
you would have walked away with your answers today. But no, you're not. You'll have to wait.
Well, I guess you will have to wait. But anyway, Dion, it looks like we've come to the end of our time. Wow, thank you everyone for showing up and asking questions. And thanks for feeding us questions for next week. So we hope to see you next week when we do address those questions. Dion, thanks again.
My pleasure.
I have a copy of this up. I know I'm a little bit behind in updating the video library. My bad. I should have everything up there by Friday, though. A copy of this and the previous week's presentation. So thanks again. Hope to see you next Wednesday. Take care and goodbye.